What happens when a former royal sits down with one of television's most outspoken hosts, and the discussion suddenly shifts in a direction no one expected? Today, we're breaking down a moment that had audiences across the country reaching for their phones. What began as a routine celebrity interview quickly turned into something far more intense. Meghan Markle appeared on The View for what was supposed to be a straightforward promotional segment. But Joy Behar had a different approach. What followed was an exchange that grew increasingly tense, with pointed questions and answers that revealed more than anyone predicted. By the end, social media erupted, leaving everyone asking the same thing: what really happened in those final minutes? If you want the full details of this exchange, make sure to hit subscribe and drop a comment below, because this conversation is about to get very interesting. Joy Behar leaned forward across the table, her trademark smile forming as she fixed her gaze on Meghan. So, Meghan, let's get to what everyone's wondering. You've been open about your struggles with the royal family, but some argue you've leaned too much into a victim narrative. How do you respond? Meghan adjusted slightly in her chair, calm but clearly surprised by the bluntness. Well, Joy, I think it's telling that when someone speaks their truth, especially a woman of color, they're so quickly dismissed as playing the victim. I've simply shared my experiences, but Joy cut in, waving her hand. Come on. You married into one of the wealthiest families in the world. You had the fairy tale wedding, the titles, the global spotlight. To some, it looks like you're biting the hand that gave you everything. The other hosts exchanged wary glances as tension grew. Whoopi tried to soften the moment. Well, I think what Meghan is saying is no, Joy interrupted firmly. I want to hear this from her. You've made millions from interviews and book deals talking about how difficult your royal life was, while ordinary people are struggling to pay bills. Doesn't that seem out of touch? Meghan's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice stayed steady. Joy, I think you're missing the core issue. This has never been about money or privilege. It's about basic dignity and the right to protect my family. Protect your family. Joy scoffed. By airing grievances on global television? By publishing tell-alls? That's protection, and what would you have done? Meghan pushed back, her composure showing cracks. If your child's safety was questioned, if tabloids worked daily to destroy your reputation, if even your own family spread false stories, Joy leaned back, almost satisfied with the rising tension. Honestly, I wouldn't have married into a family I already knew had problems. Did you really believe it would be all tiaras and tea parties? That's naive, Meghan shot back, her voice sharper now. No one can anticipate institutional racism or orchestrated character attacks. Oh, here we go again with the racism angle, Joy said, throwing up her hands. Not every criticism is about race. Sometimes people simply don't like your behavior, and that has nothing to do with skin color. The studio went silent except for the low hum of cameras. Sarah Haynes tried to step in. Maybe we should know, Meghan said firmly, raising her hand. I want to address this. Joy, that's the exact problem. When I talk about discrimination, it gets brushed off as me playing a card. But when questions were raised about my son's skin tone before he was born, that's not a card, that's reality. Joy rolled her eyes. According to you and Harry, we only have your word. No one else has stepped forward to confirm these supposed racist remarks, so, you're calling me a liar? Meghan asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm calling you someone with a very selective memory when it benefits your story, Joy replied without pause. The tension in the studio was unmistakable. Camera operators shifted, sensing a moment that could define the entire interview. Whoopi tried again to intervene. Ladies, maybe we should take this in another direction. No, Whoopi, Meghan said firmly, eyes locked on Joy. I think Joy has more she wants to say. Please, go on. Joy's smile widened, seizing the opening. Well, since you asked, I think you and Harry have made a career out of victimhood. You didn't leave the royal family because of racism or media pressure. You left because you couldn't handle not being in the spotlight. Kate drew more coverage. William was more popular. You couldn't accept being second. That's completely. I'm not finished, Joy interrupted, raising her hand. And I think this victim storyline is a business strategy. You've turned complaints into a multi-million-dollar brand. Meghan stared at her for a long moment, hands clasped tightly in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but cold. Joy, I came here expecting a respectful conversation. What you're doing proves my point. You're twisting my words, dismissing my experiences, and projecting false motives onto me. Am I, though? Joy pressed. Because from where I sit, it looks like someone who's grown very comfortable profiting from playing the victim. Meghan's eyes flashed, her composure cracking just slightly. The other hosts sat frozen, uncertain whether to step in or let the exchange continue. When Meghan finally answered, her voice was like ice. Joy, listen carefully. You've crossed a line you can't undo. On national television, you're calling a woman who's faced documented harassment, threats against her child, and systematic character attacks a professional victim. Do you realize what you've just said? Joy, either unaware or unwilling to back down, shrugged casually. I'm just saying what I see. You've turned criticizing your royal relatives into a lucrative career, Netflix deals, book contracts. If the shoe fits, the shoe fits. Meghan repeated, her voice rising for the first time. Joy, do you understand what it means to have photographers chase your 3-year-old for photos? Do you understand what it means to receive death threats because tabloids print lies about you daily? Oh, please, Joy scoffed, waving her hand. Celebrities deal with paparazzi constantly. It comes with the territory. You wanted fame, you got it. Sunny finally spoke up. Joy, maybe we should know. Sunny, Meghan cut her off, eyes still locked on Joy. Let her keep going. I want everyone to hear what she thinks about women who speak up against mistreatment. Abuse. Joy raised her eyebrows. Now you're calling this abuse? Being criticized by the press? Family conflict? That's life. Meghan. Welcome to being human. What do you call it? Meghan shot back, her voice gaining strength. When an institution refuses to correct false stories while secretly feeding negative ones? What do you call it when they deny your child the same security protection they give to other royal children? I'd call that family politics, Joy shot back. Every family has issues. Yours just happens to be more public and more profitable. The audience was silent. Some shifted uncomfortably, others leaned in, waiting for what came next. Whoopi made another attempt. You know what? Maybe we should talk about your current projects actually, Whoopi, Meghan said, her eyes never leaving Joy. This conversation is exactly what people need to hear. Joy, since you seem to have all the answers, tell me, what should I have done differently? When the palace refused to protect me and my family, what were my options? Joy leaned back, a smug expression on her face. You could have endured it like every royal wife before you. You could have done your duty instead of leaving the first time it got hard. Endured it, Meghan repeated slowly. So when tabloids published cruel stories about my unborn child, I should have just accepted it? Yes, Joy said without hesitation. That's what comes with marrying a prince. You knew the deal. Meghan stared at her for a long moment before letting out a short, bitter laugh. You know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. I knew what I was getting into. I knew the royal family had a complicated history with race. I knew the media would be relentless. What I didn't know was that I'd sit across from someone like you, dismissing real concerns for safety and well-being as nothing more than victimhood. But that's exactly what you're doing. You're twisting this, Joy snapped back. You're trying to make me the villain for asking hard questions. That's what journalists do. We don't toss you softballs just because you were a princess. Tough questions. Meghan's voice was incredulous. Joy, you haven't asked me a single thing about my work, my charitable projects, or my initiatives. You've spent this entire segment attacking my character and dismissing my experiences. That's not journalism, that's bullying. Joy's face flushed. Bullying? You came on knowing exactly what kind of host I am. If you wanted a friendly chat, you should have chosen another show. You're right, Meghan said, standing slowly from her chair. I should have gone somewhere where guests are treated with basic respect. The studio erupted in murmurs as Meghan reached for her purse. Joy, realizing she may have gone too far, tried to pull back. Wait, sit down. We're not done here. Oh, we're absolutely done. Meghan's voice was calm but firm as she unclipped her microphone. Joy, in just a few minutes, you've called me a liar, a professional victim, ungrateful, and a bully. You've dismissed racism as a card, trivialized threats against my child, and suggested I should have accepted abuse because I married into royalty. I never said you said exactly that, Meghan cut her off. And I'm finished pretending this kind of behavior is acceptable simply because we're on television. Alyssa Farah-Griffin spoke up, trying to mediate. "Meghan, please, sit down. Let's work this out." Meghan shook her head. "Alyssa, I respect you trying, but there's nothing left to discuss. Joy has made her stance clear, and so have I. Some conversations aren't worth continuing." Sensing the fallout, Joy tried one last angle. "Look, Meghan, if you can't handle pushback, maybe public life just isn't for you." That remark stopped Meghan in her tracks. She turned slowly, walked back toward the table, and placed both hands firmly on its surface. For a moment, it seemed like she might sit back down. Instead, she leaned forward, locking eyes with Joy. "You know what, Joy? You just proved my point better than I ever could. A woman speaks up for herself, shares her truth, and your response is that maybe she doesn't belong in public life. Maybe she can't handle it. Do you even hear yourself? Do you understand what you're implying?" Joy, clearly unsettled by Meghan's directness, tried to maintain her composure. "I'm saying if you choose to live in the spotlight, you have to accept that people will have opinions about your choices." "Having opinions are one thing," Meghan replied, her voice steady but sharp. "Systematically dismissing someone's experiences, calling them a liar, and suggesting they should just accept mistreatment is something else entirely. And the fact that you don't see the difference, that's the problem." Whoopi tried once again. "Ladies, maybe we should take a breath." "No, Whoopi," Meghan said firmly, her eyes locked on Joy. "I need to finish this. Joy, you asked what I should have done differently. Let me ask you, if your daughter came to you and said her in-laws let the press attack her, refused to protect her children, and she was getting death threats daily, what advice would you give her?" Joy shifted uneasily. "That's not the same. How is it different?" Meghan pressed. "Because she isn't famous? Because she didn't marry into royalty fame means you accept the trade-offs," Joy insisted, though her tone was less assured. "I chose to marry someone I love," Meghan corrected. "I didn't choose to be torn apart by tabloids while my husband's family stood by. I didn't choose to see my newborn security questioned. I didn't choose to be slandered day after day." Sarah Haynes tried to interject. "I think what Joy might be trying to say is, Sarah, please don't excuse her," Meghan said, eyes never leaving Joy. "Let her answer herself. Joy, do you believe fame means someone deserves mistreatment?" Joy faltered. "I believe when you enter public life at that level, challenges are part of it." "That's not what I asked," Meghan cut in. "Do famous people deserve mistreatment? Yes or no?" The silence hung heavy. Joy opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally muttered, "I think you're twisting my words." "I'm asking you to clarify them," Meghan replied evenly. "Because for the past 20 minutes, you've implied I should have accepted abuse because I married a prince. You've dismissed racism as a card. You've called my experiences lies. You've suggested speaking out makes me a professional victim. So I'll ask you directly, do you stand by that?" Joy glanced at her co-hosts, but met only uneasy expressions. "Look, Meghan, I think you're being overly sensitive." "Overly sensitive," Meghan repeated, straightening. "There it is, the standard dismissal. When a woman, especially a woman of color, speaks up, she's sensitive. When she shares her truth, she's playing victim. When she protects her family, she's ungrateful." "Joy, you've just proven everything I've been saying." "I'm not racist." Joy shot back, defensive now. "I never said you were," Meghan answered calmly. "But your refusal to acknowledge that racism played a role, and your insistence I should have just endured it, speaks volumes." Sunny Host finally broke in. "Joy, maybe you should apologize." "Apologize? For what?" Joy snapped. "For asking tough questions? For refusing to coddle her?" "No," Meghan said, picking up her purse. "Apologize for spending an entire segment attacking a guest instead of interviewing them. Apologize for dismissing safety and racism as irrelevant. Apologize for suggesting fame means someone deserves abuse." Joy crossed her arms. "I'm not apologizing for doing my job." "Your job?" Meghan asked, incredulous. "Your job is to interview guests, not attack them. To ask questions, not dismiss answers you don't like. To lead a conversation, not bully people into justifying their dignity." The tension in the studio was now. The tension was unbearable. Camera operators panned to audience members who looked shocked and uncomfortable. Some whispered, others shook their heads. Sensing she was losing the room, Joy tried to soften. "Look, Meghan, I'm sorry if you feel attacked. I was just trying to get to the truth, the truth." Meghan let out a bitter laugh. "Joy, you've spent this entire time telling me what my truth is instead of listening. You decided before I even sat down that I'm a liar, a victim, and ungrateful. Nothing I could say would change that. That's not true," Joy protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Meghan challenged. "Tell me one thing I've said today that you didn't immediately dismiss or twist." Joy opened her mouth, but no words came. "The silence was deafening. That's what I thought," Meghan said quietly. "I came here today hoping for a meaningful conversation. Instead, I've been subjected to 25 minutes of character assassination disguised as journalism. I've been called a liar, dismissed, told I should have accepted abuse, and when I defend myself, I'm labeled oversensitive." She paused, looking around the table. "Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, Alyssa, I appreciate your attempts to redirect. You tried to keep this professional, and I respect that." Then she turned back to Joy. "But you, I want you to think about what you've done here today. Think about how you treated a guest who came in good faith. Think about the message you're sending to women watching right now, women who might stay silent about their own struggles because they're afraid of being treated the same way that you're being dramatic," Joy finally muttered. "And there it is again," Meghan said, shaking her head. "Dismissal. Minimization. Gaslighting. This conversation is exactly why women don't speak up. Because when they do, this is the response they get." She rose, turning toward the exit, then stopped to address the camera directly. "To anyone watching who's ever been told you're too sensitive, or that you're playing victim, or that you should just accept mistreatment, your experiences matter. Your truth matters. You don't have to accept abuse from anyone, no matter how they try to justify it." "Meghan, you're twisting this whole thing," Joy said in a final attempt to regain control. Meghan turned back once more. "The only thing I'm twisting, Joy, is the doorknob on my way out. This interview is over." With that, she walked toward the exit, heels clicking against the studio floor. The cameras followed as she reached the door, glanced back briefly at the stunned panel, and then left, leaving the studio in complete silence. Joy sat frozen, mouth agape, realizing she had just created a television moment that would be remembered for years. The other hosts exchanged uneasy looks, unsure how to proceed. Finally, Whoopi cleared her throat and turned to the camera. "Well, that was unexpected. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll try to unpack what just happened." But everyone knew no amount of discussion could undo what had just unfolded live. And that's how one of the most explosive interviews in recent daytime history ended, with a former royal walking off one of TV's biggest stages, leaving behind a moment that would spark debates for months to come. What about you? How do you think this played out? Let me know in the comments below.